Good morning, Paul. I'm going to interview you now for the Israel Anthropological Association. And I just want to say that it's an honor to interview Professor Nikewi, my dear colleague and friend, for almost 30 years. Life passes, it's a long, long time, and one of the fathers of the new anthropology of Africa. So good morning, Paul.
Thank you, thank you.
Would you please tell us first a little bit about yourself?
Well,
before we begin with the anthropology of Africa, yeah.
I was born about 80 years ago, and in a small village in the mountains, the grass fields, and I came to anthropology when I was about 27, 28, when I began to read monographs that were written by the so-called government anthropologists, which were recruited, trained in Oxford and London University College, and they did the anthropology to supply necessary material for the colonial government or colonial administrator for the better understanding of the people they were governing. So when I read some of the monographs, and I was totally dissatisfied. Basically, I read especially about my own people. So I began to feel that probably I will do better. And I decided therefore to come to be an anthropologist and studied it. But I wanted to be a lawyer. Right. And the university where I studied, the University of Fribourg, the Department of Anthropology, founded by the Kulturkreislehre School of German-Austrian. I spent about a year, and I wanted to do law. But the Cameroon cardinal, where we were studying together, he said, "Look, Paul, just go on, don't waste your time and go off to do something, because you are going to lose a lot of years going off to law." And eventually I stuck to the law, to anthropology, came back, did my field work, returned about 1976, and wrote my PhD and defended. And as soon as I got my PhD, I returned to University of Yaoundé, where probably anthropology was a dirty word.
Was a dirty word. Why was anthropology? You're speaking of the 70s or 80s?
Yes, it's the 70s.
And why was anthropology a dirty word?
Yes, because probably because the 60s and 70s, the African, most of the African countries got independence. And they began to point their accusing finger of the sciences that helped subjugate African people, and therefore anthropology was not welcome, because the study of British anthropology and the French anthropology in Cameroon, the monographs were probably used by the colonial masters, and therefore the independent movement that began really in the 50s, and many of them became independent. Therefore, any subject or anything that they will lay accusing finger on it, they will do that. And probably anthropology was one of the subjects. And remember that in 1973, during the first conference of the first Congress of African Scientists held in Algiers, one of the resolutions was to ban anthropology in the emerging universities in Africa.
Wow. So
probably when I got to Yaoundé University, there was the Department of Sociology. And one of the guys, I don't know whether he studied in the US, and probably he knew anthropology. And he asked me whether I should teach. Therefore, and I came in, the word anthropology was probably not used in or being taught in the University of Yaoundé, and whatever they were teaching about the African family, the term is sociology. Mm. And actually, when I was recruited, I was to teach the sociology of African tradition, of traditional Africa. Therefore, the regular sociology will concentrate probably on industrial and developing work probably anthropology, and name the sociology of traditional Africa.
So therefore, what did you do about it?
Hello?
Yes, what did you do about it?
No, I simply told them, look, there is no such thing as a sociology of traditional Africa. Anthropology, the subject I studied, was the subject or the discipline most appropriate for Africa, because British and French anthropologists had actually laid down the groundwork, and probably I was there to continue their work.
Mm-hmm. And how did you get from this beginning to founding the Pan-African Association of Anthropology, which really was like a big turnaround?
Actually, incidentally, I was recruited in '76. Mm. And I started teaching anthropology, and everybody I made it known that I was going to do anthropology. And four years later, I don't know whether it was by design that I was pulled out of the university and and made a program officer in one of the scientific research institutes in the Ministry of Science and Technology, where I was Deputy Director of Scientific Research. And probably, to me, this became the strategic position where I would launch anthropology, because being a government civil servant, taken out of this university and reduced my teaching hours, therefore I concentrated mostly on administration. And this administrative position kept me in touch with everybody that was coming to Cameroon to do research, all kinds of research. And therefore, when I heard the conference, the 12th Congress of Anthropological Science that was organized in Zagreb, in Yugoslavia, one of the institutions to whom we are working with the environmental issues just told me, look, we will help you to go to that conference. And virtually they paid everything. Mostly partly because I was a government civil servant, and partly because I assisted them with during the kind of work, especially in anthropology and in environmental sciences. And that is, therefore, they paid the bill and took me to Zagreb, which was actually, this college was the University of Leiden. When we got up, when we went to the conference in Zagreb, and among the thousands, because probably 2,000 anthropologists was in the country, were in the country, from all over the world, and probably a few Africans. And thanks to Cooper, Adams Cooper, who himself was active in the creation of the Association of Social Anthropology in Europe. And he told me, and look, African, we should have their own association. And when I had some time during the Congress, and then I began to locate the few Africans that attended the Zagreb conference. And we were about 14. And we sat down and we said, look here, my friend, we must create an association of anthropologists. And then during the closing of the Zagreb conference, we made and read a statement vowing to create a movement of African anthropologists. And Silverman, who was the president of Vinegrain Foundation, he just told me, look, we will support you. So I came back to Cameroon. I made a report to the minister and also a report to the university, and saying that my African colleagues had empowered me to organize the first Conference of African Anthropology in Yaoundé. So I wrote about 40 letters to different vice chancellors of the existing African universities, asking them to identify anthropologists and to attend the conference. All the expenses will be paid. And virtually 32 universities identified somebody to come to the conference. And probably some of them that came to the conference were not mainstream anthropologists. And we held that conference in 1979, during which my good friend who was in Zagreb, and he was my great inspiration, Ross Bernard, probably Ross Bernard on the University of Florida. I invited him, and he was at the conference. Silverman, the president of the Venegrain Foundation, came to the conference, and I think we held the first conference with about 40 anthropologists, include Cameroon and people all over Africa. For example, Madagascar, the anthropologists who came from Madagascar went back home, and he was appointed deputy foreign minister. I think. So we had a caliber of people from all over Africa, the East Africa, Southern Africa, and East Africa, Central Africa, and West Africa, Senegal, Nigeria. And I think it's the beginning.
Yeah, it was a beginning, Paul. It was a beginning, and I actually only met you 3 years afterwards in Mexico. So my first time in Cameroon was for a very big event you organized in 1994 of social science and medicine, that you are already going out of anthropology, applying it.
Exactly, because even I made sure that if anthropology was to be relevant, it has to be applied. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I pushed applied anthropology in the university, and actually designed a number of programs in medicine. That's why you joined us.
Yeah. Could you tell us some of the activities you did to mentor young anthropologists in those years? I remember there were many activities, and you actually created a big cadre of anthropologists. Even the head of the WOW, the president of the WOW now, was once a person that you mentored. Yeah, Isaac.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So could you tell a little bit about those programs? Because anthropologists in Africa today, they know you. I mean, you began all this. What were the programs you had?
You see, I believe very firmly that the anthropology has a future in the youth that we were training. And so I designed a couple of programs, the training workshops, and actually some of the workshops, I will identify a cohort of about 12 young anthropologists, and they will come to 3 different workshops. The first one will be proposal design, because if anthropologists, young anthropologists, must be up and running, they must design programs and projects to attract funding. The second workshop was proposal. I mean, the first one was proposal design. And the second workshop was what I call writing workshops, where they were trained to write and digest their research, I mean, the raw ethnographic things to really good articles that can compete for journal space in international journal. And therefore, so most of them were master's degree. Like, for example, Nyamungo, who is now the president of the World Anthropological Council, came to this work, and he had a master's degree. The people whom I relied on was our own colleagues, like people like you and people in the US, especially Professor Ross Bernard, who actually helped me run this workshop. Therefore, I had visualized that about 10 to 20 years we will train at least a cohort of 30 or 40 anthropologists, young anthropologists. And therefore I marketed the idea for Vennegrain Foundation and Carnegie Corporation and UNESCO, because I had to be active to generate resources to be able to train these young people. You see, one of the Nyamungo came from identifying Nyamungo. He came to one of the workshops, and Mary Amuzunzu, he came to a series of workshops, and actually two of them actually met and married. You see, sometimes.
Really? I didn't know that they'd been married. I met them both together at one of your workshops. That is really incredible.
Yes.
Remember, you organized this workshop for women that I was included also, and we went to Abidjan. Now, that was also a very innovative kind of work. I mean, it's not done in other places. You remember that?
Yes, because, I still remember that, because not only was I targeting young people, but we were also concerning about gender issues. Yeah. Like for example, the meeting in Ivory Coast, in Abidjan, and I asked one of the anthropologists from Tajikistan, who came. The lady came to our meetings and to share actually the struggles with respect to gender. And also, I think it is. I'm really proud of some of the things we did.
I think so. I want to go a little bit ahead. You were actually the pioneer work on HIV and culture when you were working with 5 countries. And
now,
really, yeah.
This, I think my concern about applied anthropology and the marketing about applied anthropology landed me in several programs, especially UNFPA. especially the population conference in Cairo, because UNFPA asked me to come to New York. I spent a couple of weeks in New York and to help at least design some of the UNFPA programs in Africa. Then the World Bank asked me, I don't know, to help them do a program about HIV/AIDS. Therefore we designed a program for about 5 countries: Ivory Coast, Cameroon, Malawi, Kenya, and Togo. And our job was to help understand the culture of sexuality and how we can help, target HIV, and at least to understand whether some of the cultural practices were vehicles for HIV infection. It was that program was funded by the World Bank, and eventually I left my job in the ministry, and I spent about five years in Nairobi, to coordinating this project, which is heavily cultural in the 5 countries.
Yeah, I remember you asked me to help you train, and you sent me to Malawi, where no one knew how to train, no one knew qualitative research. Yeah, but that was really, it was an eye-opening experience, because one of the cultural beliefs, one of the cultural customs in this area was that all the girls were circumcised one after the other, or were initiated. So that was one of the things we actually discovered. It was really a fascinating experience to later apply it in, to prevent HIV.
Yeah, I think so. It's very interesting because UNFPA Malawi called me and said, please come down and train our staff in the Ministry of Health and also UNFPA. And then we organized a workshop at Lake Mangochi. And all these officials from the ministry, they were excited because little that they know about anthropology, and little that they know how anthropology could create inroads about understanding culture and cultural behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, to me, it was a very exciting experience.
Yeah. And the PAA, anyhow, it continues with yearly meetings throughout the years and in different countries. And what were your main focus throughout the last decade that you were working before you retired from University of Yaoundé? What were the different topics you focused on?
Yeah, normally they, like I said, the first issues of the 10 years of anthropology, mm-hmm. we work mostly on culture and population issues. Mm-hmm. The second decade, we focus in human development. and targeting maybe appropriate development, and also tying it down to the Millennium Development Goals, which were actually forced. We not forced, but we concentrated on that.
Yes.
Therefore, because our thing, our problem, our vision was to make anthropology relevant and to clean the image of anthropology. Therefore, anthropology could be a tool in the development and the advancement of African people. Because if you don't know the cultural behavior of people, you cannot adapt a meaningful development.
Of course.
You know, the conference that we were building in Nairobi, in Yaoundé, to celebrate our 30 years of existence.
Last year.
Last year,
yeah.
Exactly 2020. And the theme was emerging epidemics.
Yeah, it's outstanding. We see when we get there, maybe it will be emerge or retiring epidemics. But
exactly.
It's really
exactly.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because probably my paper was well, I didn't share with you, was actually focused. The 70s and 80s population issues, and probably the 90s Ebola. And suddenly in the 2020s, we have COVID.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's rolling out. And probably this theory, what do you call the the theory of because most of us, because even though we were working in HIV/AIDS in the 70s and the 80s and 90s, the conspiracy theories were actually behind our minds.
They're still there today.
We were we were told that the HIV/AIDS was actually crafted in a laboratory, experimented in California. The thing got out of hand and it spread. Okay. One maybe as I should recount some anecdote. When I was heading the program in Nairobi, and one of my funders came from Washington to see me, and we were there. He told me that we will give you money if we promote masturbation.
Really?
Among young people, because if you promote masturbation, therefore people are not going to get contacts by sexual whatever. And I said, this is contrary to African culture. Because how are we convince the people that this genetic material will waste away. And I told him, no, we cannot. That what the person had just told me, because we will give him money to promote masturbation in all the projects, at least the 5 countries, among young people. And I said, no.
Of course.
Yes.
I want to ask you something. We have like 15 more minutes, so I'd like actually to ask you, what made you decide to? You were many years in the projects in the University of Yaoundé, and you trained many people who today are the big anthropologists in Cameroon. What made you decide when you retired to go back to Bamenda? Because that is another big story. And I'd really like to put it here. You finished one period and then you went back to Bamenda.
Yes, actually, I decided that I was not going to spend a single day in Yaoundé and out of the university.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to do, go back to the village, retire, and do other things with my life, and probably be more engaged in community development.
Mm-hmm.
Because I established a college, a technical school in 1989.
Mm-hmm.
And I trained hundreds and thousands of people in the technical subject course.
In Bamenda? In Bamenda,
Yes,
in the Northwest?
yes, in my village.
Okay.
And therefore, because my childhood experience just made me that at least the kids in my children in my village will not follow the same path. Number one, my father was probably very protective of me. I don't know, maybe he delayed my going to primary school. And I went to primary school at 10. And I went to secondary school at 18. So everybody, my age mates were pretty ahead of me. So when I started teaching at the University of Yaoundé, and I just told myself that create an institution to help rural kids access education. And therefore, I wasn't going to create just a normal grammar school, but I wanted to emphasize on the techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, technical subjects, building, construction, electricity, woodwork, and whatever. Because most of the schools at that time were simply churning out. They were not churning out technicians, because I believe that. So I thought that after my university training, retiring, I will go back and actually focus on that.
But then you had a surprise.
No, actually, the bishops called me. I said, hey, are you retiring? I said, okay, look, for 1 year, we have been thinking about creating a university. Please, could you come and help us? and I couldn't refuse it. Now, and the advantage that they had, first, I've spent 30 years in the University of Yaoundé. I worked in the ministry, so I knew every nook and corner of the Ministry of Higher Education, and that facilitated my work. Therefore, I sat down for 2 years. I crafted the programs with a team that I put together, and I walked through the ministry, and finally in October 2010, the ministry approved. That meant I had worked about 3 years, probably for no pay, and I was very, very pleased that I could pay back to my own community.
So you got anthropology in Bamenda. I will show you a picture in a minute, but I'd like to know now, most people do not know what's been happening in Cameroon in the last 5 years. So you could take 5 minutes to explain what has been happening, especially between the Northwest and Southwest, and then how this took you, what happened to you and how you came back from Bamenda to Yaoundé. If you could explain this a little bit, yeah. Even briefly, so people understand, how things change and what happens.
Okay, when I went to Bamenda, where the university started, the Catholic University of Cameroon, which I'm very much affiliated, in 2010, and then I was appointed Deputy Vice Chancellor in charge of academics, and so 2016, the problems between the two Cameroons, but in 2016, I had done the 6 years mandate because I was appointed for 3 years renewable. Mm-hmm. So in 2016, I was relieved of my post, but heading the anthropology department. One thing, I created the anthropology department. And, but interestingly, when the political parties were officially at least the law permitted that most political parties, new political parties could emerge. And therefore, the government party that was that was ruling this country. And I left that. Actually, I was in that government party, politics, being in the ministry. But I left the party and joined the opposition party. And probably this was one of the reasons that I wouldn't stay in Yaoundé. So I moved back. Mary moved later on. But the problems that started in 2016 where a few Anglophones, quite a number of Anglophones were dissatisfied because quite a lot of them are marginalized, and therefore they began to make at least to assert a kind of independence. But So I wasn't, so I stayed in Bamenda, and one day my son drove me to the village to go to see my phone, or the ruler of our tribe. And on my way back, my phone started ringing. Everybody was calling me. And I say, well, actually, I was appointed a member of the Constitutional Council of Cameroon. At least expected. And a Constitutional Council, which is one of the 4 institutions of Cameroon recognized by the Constitution. And it took a long time, about 22 years for that constitutional provision to be fulfilled. So the news just broke to me that I was a member, and I was really, really surprised. So I had to come down to Yaoundé and then resume duty. Then I was sworn in by Parliament, and by joint session of Parliament, and the Senate, and where I am.
That's where you are now. I want to ask you one last question, and then I want to show you a couple of pictures that will be interesting probably for you. What are the challenges for anthropology now with COVID? How has this affected anthropology, anthropological work in Cameroon? What's going on?
Yeah, I think the COVID probably gives an opportunity for anthropologists to preach is relevant, to preach exactly. For example, I was on the panel on the TV. They actually invited me to, and I just said, look, lockdown is really conditions, but how are you going to stop people marry, because marriage is a social affair? People burying their dead because, etc., etc. Now, could we go understand what the social behavior is and the cultural behavior is, and adapt it instead of imposing it?
Adapting it.
Yes.
Yes. And I want to show you a couple of pictures, and then there's one last question because we are near the end. I want to share something. Actually, I couldn't go very far back, but I think you will find this interesting. Just a minute. This is your city, yeah? Bamenda from the top. Yeah, I had the honor of visiting probably half a year after the university was founded, and I taught some of your classes. So this
exactly.
is, yeah, the Catholic University of Bamenda, which was a wonderful atmosphere. This was the rector.
Yes,
the father. Yeah, and here your friend and other anthropologists. It was a conference.
Peter Geschicker.
Yeah, yeah. And this was in a classroom. You see, we are in a classroom. And these are anthropology students.
Yes. Oh.
This was a fascinating experience. They were motivated anthropology experience. And different from our universities, here we have the communal place where the staff is, the professors are having lunch. For me, it was a wonderful experience. You know, everyone together. It's a Catholic university. They were the fathers also and the other secular professors. And this one,
okay.
could you explain this, please?
No, this is actually the totem pole in the palace.
In your
You remember
home village?
We went to
Yeah.
Palace. Yes.
Yeah. In the home. So again, you just to understand from where Paul is coming, and I don't remember what these are.
No, this is the palace of Com.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the where the flag is where the ruler, the chief, sits.
Ah, okay. And then
Yeah.
I'm going to jump. When I did much work in Cameroon, and Paul helped me always to find local anthropologists that speaks the local language. And I was training people from the extreme north, an area where now is attacked by Boko Haram. And we did a training. Yeah. And I told him, you know, I know Professor Nikoui, and he came to visit and he helped us in the training. And everyone, these are people from villages in the extreme north. They came to be trained to do a community research. Yes, and they were so happy to see you. Yes. Yes. And again, here we are teaching these people. This is the atmosphere outside. So I
outside the hotel.
Yeah, so I just thought I found these pictures this morning. I don't have further back, but to see. So a last question, what are the challenges and the future of African anthropology today? How do you see this?
No, I think the future of anthropology is actually bright, because 30 years ago, I had 5 students, at least if my yardstick is the University of Yaoundé. I'm saying it is bright. I had 5 students in 1976. Actually, I have thousands in the University of Yaoundé, because sometimes they go out to all kinds of professions, military, police, security, and whatnot. And it is amazing. The Department of Anthropology is practically in the state universities, probably the 6th state university. In the north, there are 2 universities. And there's 6 state universities, anthropology is taught.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So
actually, the private universities, meaning the Catholic universities, actually, they have anthropology departments. And one of my graduate students is doing a PhD in Notre Dame, and we actually wrote the book which were published some time ago.
Yes. Paul, I want to thank you very much. I think this will be a fascinating talk and story for the anthropologists in Israel who are not in, who don't know this world. And I really hope we will be able to celebrate the 31st anniversary of the PAA in Yaoundé, and after the pandemic. And also that you will be able to come and visit us in Israel as planned, and again postponed because of COVID.
Yeah, but just one word.
Yes.
That I thank you for making this possible. But about 2 months ago, I had a slight stroke. Mm. And actually, it affected my speech. And I had to go through a speech therapy. So I wanted to refuse not to do this interview because I wasn't able to articulate my ideas, but I had to do it because of you. because of our friendship. And my dream is to come to Israel.
And I hope
actually, before the COVID, I was planning to go to Rome with Mary and then go to Israel. So maybe
it will happen. I hope that your room is waiting, your house is waiting for you and for Mary. And I wish you all the best, and thank you so much, Paul. Thank you very much.
God bless.
Bye-bye. Thank you.